Hello, this is Summer Art Academy at the Knoxville Museum of Art. My name is Miss Hannah and I will be teaching Don't Throw That Out, Part 1 for 7 through 9-year-olds. Welcome artists. Again, my name is Miss Hannah and I will be your guide during Don't Throw That Out. We will be collecting discarded materials and reimagining them into something new. While creating our own unique art, we will consider quotes by popular American artists as inspiration. Today, we will discuss and identify the parts of a book, assemble a sketchbook from recyclable material, use junk mail, envelopes, and paper to create signatures. Are you ready? Our first project for Don't Throw That Out is going to be making our own sketchbooks. For this, you're going to need some type of box, like a cereal box or a cracker box, to use as the cover. It does not matter the size of the box, it's completely up to you, because if your box is smaller, you can cut your paper smaller, or if your box is too big, you can cut your box down to size. I'm going to start with the smaller of the two boxes. To create the sketchbook, the first thing you'll want to do is open one side. There's usually one side that has a seam that you can just pull open. If for some reason you can't make that work, you can also just use scissors or an X-Acto knife, which I will talk about in a minute, to cut open your box, like so. These types of boxes are made out of a thin cardboard material known as chipboard, which makes them really easy to cut even with children's scissors. Once I have my box open, you're going to need to save 3 sides of your box and keep them attached. This is going to create your cover, your front and back cover, as well as the spine of your sketchbook. So I'm going to cut off one edge. And as I demonstrated before, you can easily use scissors to do this. However, if you want to try something else, you can use something called an X-Acto knife. X-Acto knives are very sharp, and they can also cause some damage on your table. So if you are cutting with one, make sure you put it on top of some sort of surface, like a piece of cardboard. What I'm going to do is put these flaps down, like so, and just cut the excess material off. Sometimes you'll need to cut more than one time. I have one hand next to the blade, but not under or in front of the blade. You want to make sure that as you cut nice and slow, you're not cutting towards your hand. And you might be able to see here where the blade is cutting into the cardboard. And while the scissors work, the X-Acto blade can often be a little bit quicker. And make sure I put it down, and when it rolled, it's getting close to me, so I'm going to just make sure it goes further away from me. And cut. Then I'm going to go to the other side. Now remember, I need a front, a spine, and a cover. So I still need to cut off this section and the remaining flaps. This is one of those times whenever you're cutting, you just really want to take your time. One is for safety reasons, but the other reason is because if you make a mistake, you'll just have a lot of scraps of paper. You won't have a book. Now, rather than throwing out all of these scraps I just made, I'm going to put them aside, and we might be able to incorporate them into another project. And I now have a completed cover. When creating a sketchbook, I normally start with the inside, the interior, the pages, the signatures. But this time we started with our outside, and the reason is we want to be able to make sure our pages will fit in our sketchbook. To create a page for your sketchbook, we're going to fold, then we'll measure and cut. To fold a piece of paper, I like to roll one end to meet the other. By rolling it, I'm not creating the crease too soon. Support with one hand while I push back towards the closed end with the other, and then crease. Anytime you fold a sheet of paper, it creates something called a folio. A folded sheet of paper is called a folio. To check my size, I'm going to place it inside my sketchbook, like so. And if you notice, when I flatten it, it's a bit too big. I can then either use my scissors to trim it, or with adult permission, use your X-Acto knife. We'll do this one with our scissors. And then I have some here that we'll test out with an X-Acto knife. Now, if you're looking at this paper and you're thinking, hey, wait, that's not trash. I have chosen papers that have marks on them. So these are the papers that a lot of times we don't like to use, but you can absolutely use clean paper you've never used before. Now, to show you how to use it with an X-Acto knife, again, I'm going to place my paper in, fold my book down, use it as a guide. I put one hand firmly holding this in place, take my other hand, put it on top of a scrap piece of cardboard, and take my time to cut. The goal isn't to get it cut the first time, the goal is to get it cut safely. So now I have two ways of shortening my folios. As I'm making folios, I can put them inside each other. I don't like to have more than 5 folios fitted together. When you have several folios together, that is called a signature. And in a moment, we're going to talk about how to put our signatures in our books. But before we do that, I want to teach you how to make a different type of folio. This time, we are going to be using envelopes. Now, I've shown you how to create folios and signatures out of folded pieces of paper, but you can also use discarded envelopes to create folios. And what I'm going to do that is I have one here, and I really like these ones with the viewfinders, and then just another standard envelope. The great thing about envelopes is they already have some adhesive on them, and so you can just lick your envelope or use some water to put that, to activate that adhesive, or you can choose liquid or glue stick. It's up to you. I do like to have multiple options available to me. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to place one envelope on top of the flap of the other one, just like that. And then I'm going to glue down this envelope as well. So I'm gluing down that flap. So here I've created an envelope where I can slide something in like this, but then I have this one, I'm going to move it just a little bit, that still has this fun viewfinder there at the front. And what I'm going to do now is just cut the top off. And so once it's dry, and I can straighten that up too. Once the envelopes are dried together, I now have something I can slide down, and when it's closed, I'll be able to see what's inside. So this is one option. Another option is just like I showed you. Seal the envelope, cut it down, and you can glue it on top of a discarded piece of postcards, then fold the postcard, and you have another folio. I have other options as well. So something like this, where the flap was already torn, I can glue this inside a piece of paper to be able to use it. If I need to make it shorter, but still need it to close, I can cut the envelope, fold the excess, and I still have access to the inside. And I'm just going to glue that into the inside of one of my paper folios. Like so. Once you've made several different styles of folio using paper, envelopes, whatever you have on hand, there's no right or wrong here, we are going to combine them and add them into our book. To get that started, we have to create holes in our book. And for this style of book, I like to use a hole punch. The hole punch has what's called a tongue. That's the middle part here. The chipboard fits underneath that tongue. And I'm going to push it against the edge of this cover here, the front cover. And I'm going to squeeze and make a hole. I'm going to go to the other side, put the chipboard underneath the tongue, the box, the cover, underneath the tongue, as far as it'll go, and make a hole punch. This ensures that my holes are in the even space on each side because I'm using my hole punch as a guide. Each pair of holes, top and bottom, represents where one grouping of folios will go. So I'm going to put 5 folios together, like this. 1, 2, 2, 3. 4 and 5. I'm going to put these together like this. This is one signature. 5 folios, one signature. I'm going to find the crease where my folios meet. This is called the gutter. I'm going to put the gutter underneath the tongue of my hole punch. Squeeze. Turn to the other side. Use the gutter as your guide, because then you'll know you're in the center. Put the signatures underneath the tongue, right there in the gutter, and squeeze. And now I have holes correctly through 5 folios, one signature. I'm now going to take a piece of yarn, and I'm putting it inside the signature. So inside the gutter, just like this. Put one end through one hole, one end through the other hole. The holes are big enough that you can do it with your fingers, but if you have trouble, you can use a plastic needle or a bookbinder's needle. So I can hold my book like this. And now I'm going to go over here and place the ends through the corresponding holes on the book's cover. Pull it tight and tie a knot. So I've cross my 2 strings again, loop 1 string through, and pull tightly. You can cut off these extra strings. I always like to leave a little bit loose. So that way if you do have your knot come undone, you have enough to retie it. And what's great about these covers using the boxes is they're very wide. So I can add as many signatures as I want to just by punching more holes. And remember, as you make more signatures, you don't want more than 5 folios in each. It just becomes too thick to really handle. But you can have a whole bunch of different offerings. You can get really creative and have colorful ones like this. Your envelope signatures, such as this. And if you'll notice, these are actually on the shorter side. So what I like to do to get these in is I'm going to take one of my folios that's the same size as my book, and I'm going to put it underneath the tongue, use the hole punch as a measure, and this will give me a guide as to where the holes need to go for my shorter folios. So what I've done is, well, it'll help with that hole. All right. So I'm putting my shorter signatures, my shorter folios inside one of my standard sizes, and I'm going to move it around until it fits in the holes. And then I'm going to actually punch from the outside. And that allows me to have the holes where they will fit directly into my book and still fit. Again, just tie the knot. I mentioned leaving extra string so you can retie later, but that also means you can untie it and add more pages if you need to, so you can transform your book. And here you go. You can just keep on adding pages until your book is full, or you can wait until your pages are full and add them as you go. Throughout Don't Throw It Out, I'm going to be introducing you quotes by famous American artists. Our first quote is "Take an object, do something to it, do something else to it" by American artist Jasper Johns. We'll be discussing him in more detail in part 3. But our sketchbooks are the perfect example of that quote. We started off with an object, a box, and then we added to it and added to it again by adding in envelopes and imagery. Now we're going to continue that process by adding yet again, except this time we're going to be adding ideas. In part 2, we will be discussing American artist Romare Bearden. Romare Bearden was especially known for his collages that combined printed imagery from magazines, newspapers, and photographs. And he combined these with his own paintings, creating a documentary effect. And that just means he was documenting a specific place and time. and I want you to document yourself. I want you to go through some fun magazines with permission that maybe you're ready to get rid of. Some of your mailers, we have some great mailers here that have fun images, fun wording, and I want you to go through them, and when you find things that inspire you, I want you to cut them out and think about what they speak, how they speak to you, and what they're saying to you. Some of them we'll end up using, some of them we will not. But as you cut, you can either put them in your sketchbook or have an envelope ready and slide them in so you have them all in one place for part 2. Thank you for joining me for part 1 of Don't Throw That Out. Today we created a sketchbook using recycled materials. We learned about the parts of a book and created several unique signatures which can hold your thoughts, ideas, and paper collections. In part 2, we will explore realism and abstraction by creating a mixed media collage. Think about what colors, shapes, and images you want to use to communicate your story. Draw or write down these ideas in your sketchbook. You can even collect scrap paper, images, and text that speak to you. Thank you for participating in Summer Art Academy at the Knoxville Museum of Art. See you next time.